y'all, it's Hope and Crafty Hope, and welcome. I think I'm about to make a necklace. I received a beautiful assortment of beads from Jesse James Beads. I'll put a link up here to the unboxing of that. I also have this is a lot of my Jesse James beads sorted in this box, along with some other things, chain and all kinds of stuff they've sent me. And so I sat down. I really love this enamel chain that I got in this past package, and some of the beads in this lily mix really went these larger, you can see them like frosted purple beads, and then this beautiful bead was in some of the other stuff, but it matches these like rectangular ones. I just like the large size of this one, so I kind of, oh, and this one also was from something else that they sent me, as well as the spacers. And yeah, and yeah, you can see I'm working on a necklace design. I've kind of laid it out, and I was like, you know what? I am going to pop on the camera and share with y'all what I'm doing. So I think I'm going to do a layered necklace. It's not something I've done very often, but again, that's why I'm popping the camera on. Maybe you haven't done it either and kind of wanted to watch that process. So I will probably voice over the rest of this. If you have any questions, let me know. All right, let's make this. All right, so I have a piece of chain already cut that is slightly longer than what I want my enamel chain to be. This enamel chain is from Jesse James Beads. It is super awesome, but I decided to have 10 of those little enamel drops hanging down. I thought that was just kind of a perfect length, and I'm keeping it an odd number because I don't want there to be a center enamel chain charm hanging down, because I kind of want it to have the central pieces to be that top layer and the bottom layer, and this bottom layer is going to be my crystal. So, and I'm double checking my length of everything, kind of giving it that curve, and this is all a personal preference. You just want that bottom length of chain to be the longest length of chain. So I've decided this is probably about right. You can always change it later. So remember that it's a lot easier to take away chain than to add more later. Okay, so I'm making a wrap loop, and put my bead onto a head pin, and I'm using my round nose pliers to form a loop. And with the tail of that loop, I'm going to wrap it around the stem that's between the loop and the bead. I have a tutorial, I'll put it in the upper right, of how to make wrap loops if this is unclear to you. We're going to make another 2 more wrap loops here in a bit, but my tutorial's got a bit more information and does it a bit slower for you. So this is just basically turning this bead into a charm or a dangle that you can hang from the chain. Now, if you want to, you can hang it directly onto the chain from the loop you've made. I'm going to go ahead and add a jump ring here in just a moment once I get my loop finished. I'm trying to get that loop as tight as I can so that the bead doesn't spin too much, but it's going to go ahead and spin a little bit, simply because I didn't want to continue to rough house that bead with my pliers and chip it any. So you've got to kind of weigh your options there. So once I've trimmed that excess tail off, I am going to take another pair of chain nose pliers and just tuck that little bit of tail there. And I'm going to hold it with my round nose pliers there because it was spinning on me, and then get it tucked just like that, so that I am happy with it. I don't like any of that tail hanging because it feels like it's too much of a jaggedy edge, and I don't want somebody wearing this to get like it snag on their clothes or their body or anything. So here's where I am grabbing some jump rings. So I've got one, and it is already open, so I'm going to go ahead and just slip it on to the loop of my little charm we've just made and close it. And you always close a jump ring by twisting. That's how you open and close a jump ring. If you do it any other way, it's going to distort. And then I'm going to insert one end of my chain into that jump ring that we just put on there. Once that is on there, I'll slide it to about the middle and take another good look at the length of that and how it's going to hang. Again, I could have made this a bit shorter, but really I just wanted it longer. So the next thing I'm going to do is create my top layer, and that is using some 20 gauge silver plated wire. I'm going to cut a length off that is a bit longer than I knew I needed. And I am going to then, once I've got that, I'm going to put that little bit of wire aside. And I think that's what I'm going to do. Yeah, see, I'm sitting, I'm thinking, and I'm like, oh no, what I need to do first is cut my chain, because I want to have 2 equal pieces of chain on either side of this little bead cluster we're going to make. So I've got my end of my chain there, and I'm kind of trying to figure out how long I need that chain to be. And I'm looking at it, and I don't want to cut 3 pieces of chain, so I'm taking a little bit of time to say, okay, if the chain is this long and it is that, I need to cut it there. And I'm going to double check that by putting it there and then putting it over here and saying, okay, is that about the middle? And yeah, I'm thinking real hard on this, y'all. And it took a little time. This is definitely something you want to play with. This is my big thing, was I wanted to make sure in the end this ended up being shorter than that bit of enamel chain. So I was like, you know what? If it's too long, I can always take some away. So I'm going to go ahead and trim that. And I'm going to take that little piece of chain and insert the wire into either end of the links on either end, just so I can find the middle of this chain. Now this ended up being an even number link chain, which means that it doesn't have a middle point. So I need to trim one off to make it an odd numbered links. And so I'll put that other end back on there and find the center of this. So the chain that's hanging right in the middle, I'm going to go ahead and cut that right off so that I have 2 equal pieces of chain now. Just like that, one for each side of this bead cluster we're going to make. All right, so now we're going to make another wrap loop. We're going to bend our wire to 90-degree angle, make a loop, and before we close that loop, we're going to open it just a little bit and slip one of the ends of one of those chains we just made onto the end, just like that. And then we will close that loop. I'm trying to figure out what pliers I want, and I like these tweezer nose pliers. So we'll close that loop and hold that loop closed as we twist that wire around a few times. And this is making the wraps for a wrapped loop. Once I've got it twisted a few times, I'm going to go ahead and trim off the excess and then tuck that little bit that may be poking up down. Like I said, I don't want anything that might hurt somebody. And I'm going to put one of those big beads, and I've got a silver spacer, and then the smaller purple bead, and another silver spacer, and then another larger purple bead. And that is my little cluster that I'm making, and all of those beads are from Jessie James Beads, just from different mixes I've gotten from them. And now we're going to make another wrap loop at the other side, and it's going to go in the same direction as that first one. You can tell I've sped this up just a little bit. So we've made the loop, and before we close it, we're going to take that other piece of chain, slip it on there to your loop, and then close the loop. Again, holding that loop closed so your chain doesn't come off. And we'll make 2 or 3 wraps and trim it, and then tuck that little bit of an end. Now it's just down to connecting everything. I did bend that bead cluster a little bit to give it a bit of a curve, so it has some natural curve to it, so it'll hang well. So from there we get a couple of those jump rings. So we've got one and it's open, and make sure you put this on in order that you want it. So we've got our bottom layer, our middle layer, and then our top layer. If we can get it on that jump ring. And then I'm going to go ahead and close it just to keep everything secure. And again, we're twisting that closed, and I'm going to lay it there and try not to move it. Take our other jump ring, and I'm going to use my other hand to hold that so I can get this again in the order that I want. So the bottom, the middle, and the top, and then close it. From there, I'll go ahead and I'm looking at it. And once I'm happy with that, I'll grab my chain and trim it down to about the length I need. I will go ahead and admit to y'all that I did end up shortening this later because it was a bit too long. So the pictures you'll see at the end are the correct length.
So I look at this again, it is not it's an even numbered link. So I cut a link off. So it'll be an odd number of links. So I have one hanging in the center, and I will trim that middle there and then double check that those are the same length. I always double check in case the first time was wrong. And so from there, I will open those jump rings that I had on the sides, making sure not to tussle them too much or get any of those chains out of order. And slip on our final chain and close it, and then do the other side. Now, the last thing that we will do is add our clasp and all of that. And this is where I encourage you to kind of look at the length of everything, because you can go ahead and start taking off chain if it is too long, which is what I should have done, but I ended up working it out later. So I just had to count the number of links that I took off each side. So now I'm going to grab 2 more jump rings and a clasp, and then I will add 1 jump ring and the clasp on one side, and then another jump ring on the other side, and that will make our closure. And that is it, y'all. I know that there was some futzing in here for me to try to get the right length, but it really doesn't take it very long once you kind of decide how long you want these layers, and all of this is completely customizable and up to you. Like I said before, if you have any questions about this at all, please let me know. I'm going to have links to Jessie James Beads below, and I encourage you to check them out. All right, guys, if you like this, give me a thumbs up. Make sure to subscribe and come back later and see what else I'm making. All right, guys, thanks for watching. Bye.